The moment Jack Murphy saw the tiny, wild foal standing alone on the ridge trail, something in his chest tightened. It wasn't the kind of sight a rancher expected on a cool Arizona morning. But the way the young foal looked at him stopped Jack cold. The little horse wasn't curious. It wasn't cautious, it was begging for help in the only way it knew how. And Jack felt that silent plea cut straight through him. The sun cast long shadows across the Red Canyon walls as Jack guided his quarter horse, Ranger, along the narrow trail. Jack had ridden these lands for over 30 years, and he knew every bend, every hidden spring, every place where cattle liked to wander. But today, something felt off. Ranger sensed it first. His ears snapped forward, and his steps slowed until he finally stopped completely. The horse refused to move. "What is it, boy?" Jack murmured, scanning the open ridge. That's when he saw the movement, small, shaky, and alone. A foal stepped out from behind a weather-beaten boulder. Its ribs showed through its dull brown coat, and its legs trembled with every step. It couldn't have been more than a few months old. No mother, no herd, no protection. "That's not right," Jack whispered. Wild foals didn't approach humans. They didn't wander this far from their mothers. And they certainly didn't stand there staring with eyes full of fear and hope at the same time. But this one did. The foal took a few steps closer. Then it stopped again, as if waiting for Jack to do something. Anything. Jack slowly reached for his binoculars. When he brought the lens into focus, his breath caught in his throat. The foal wasn't just starving. It was dehydrated, exhausted, lost. And its eyes, those eyes held something that made Jack feel like he was looking at a child alone in the wilderness. "Where's your mama, little one?" he whispered. No answer came, but Jack already knew something was terribly wrong. He dismounted Ranger slowly, careful not to startle the young horse. But the foal didn't run. It just stood there, head hanging low, making a soft sound, half cry, half plea, that went straight to Jack's heart. The foal took another step, a trembling one, then another. Jack crouched down, speaking gently, letting his voice carry across the quiet canyon. "I'm not gonna hurt you. It's all right." The foal's tiny ears flicked forward at his voice. It made another soft cry, higher this time, more desperate. Jack had heard many sounds from wild horses in his life, but never one like this. This was the sound of a creature at the edge of survival. Jack slowly approached. When he got close enough to see the foal clearly, he felt a jolt of shock. Around its neck, half hidden under the tangled fur, was a thin, sharp-edged scar. A rope scar. Someone had put a rope around this foal. Someone had taken it, or tried to, and someone had separated it from its mother. Jack's hands curled into fists for a moment before he forced himself to calm down. Anger wouldn't help this little soul. Not now. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a piece of apple. The foal hesitated, shaking on its thin legs. But hunger won. It stepped closer, took the apple piece gently from Jack's palm, and breathed against his hand with a warm, trembling exhale. Jack swallowed hard. "Easy now, you're all right." The foal pressed its nose against his shirt, as if trying to make sure he was real. Then, as if trusting him completely, it leaned its small head against his arm. Jack had taken in injured animals before. Calves, stray dogs, even a wounded hawk once. But nothing had ever looked at him like this. This wasn't a simple rescue. This was a plea for life. "You must have been out here a long time," he whispered. Ranger stood patiently behind Jack, seeming to understand the gravity of the moment. The canyon wind rustled through the sage, the only sound besides the soft breathing of the foal leaning against him. Jack knew he couldn't leave it here, not like this. But he also knew the law. Taking a wild horse, especially a foal, onto private land without notifying the Bureau of Land Management was a serious violation. But looking into its desperate eyes, the law didn't matter anymore. "What would Linda tell me to do?" he murmured, thinking of his late wife. He already knew the answer. Jack worked slowly, calmly, coaxing the foal onto a tarp so he could carry it safely across the rugged trail. The little horse was too weak to resist, too tired to even fear him now. It trusted him with everything it had left. As Jack lifted the tarp and secured it to Ranger's saddle, the foal made one small, broken sound. It wasn't scared. It wasn't fighting. It was reaching for help. And that shattered the last bit of hesitation inside him. "All right, little one," Jack said softly. "I won't leave you. Not now." With Ranger moving carefully and the foal wrapped gently against him, Jack began the long ride back to the ranch. But what Jack didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know yet, was that this desperate little foal's story was far bigger than a simple rescue. And the truth behind why it had followed him was waiting in the shadows of the Arizona canyons, waiting to break his heart all over again. Jack reached the ranch before noon, but the weight on his shoulders felt heavier than anything he had carried in years. Ranger moved carefully across the yard as if he understood that the tiny life tied to his saddle needed every bit of gentleness he could offer. The moment Ranger stopped, Jack slid down, cradling the foal in his arms. Roberto Santos stepped out of the barn, wiping grease from his hands. "Boss, you're back early." Then he saw the bundle. His eyes widened. "What in the world?" Jack knelt carefully in the shade of the barn wall. Found him alone on the ridge. Starving, scared, he kept following me. Roberto crouched beside him. "Dios, he looks half dead." The foal lifted its head weakly, looking from Jack to Roberto as if trying to understand what would happen next. Jack ran a hand gently along its neck, feeling the bones too sharp beneath the skin. "We can't leave him out there. Not like this." Roberto sighed, knowing exactly what this meant. "BLM isn't gonna like this, Jack." "I know," Jack said quietly. But BLM wasn't the one staring into his eyes on that ridge. Together they carried the foal into the old equipment shed behind the barn. The place smelled of hay, dust, and tools, but it was quiet and safe. Roberto hurried to gather straw while Jack set down the foal gently, speaking to it in that low, calming voice he didn't even know he still had. "There you go, little one. You're safe now." For a while, neither man spoke. The foal lay still, breathing hard from exhaustion. Jack brushed away the dirt on its coat and saw again the thin scar circling its neck. A perfect rope mark. Roberto noticed too. "Somebody did this, boss." Jack nodded slowly. Somebody tried to take him, or take his mother. And something went wrong. Roberto finished. The thought chilled Jack more than the canyon wind ever could. By afternoon, Jack had already driven into town for supplies: milk replacer, soft hay, water pans. Mary Peterson at the feed store raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Everyone in town knew Jack Murphy didn't bring home strays without a reason. When he returned, the foal was awake and trying to stand. Its legs shook, but the determination in its dark eyes was unmistakable. Jack knelt beside it and held out the bottle. The foal sniffed it uncertainly before drinking with desperate hunger that made Jack's heart ache. "Easy, little guy," Jack whispered, "one step at a time." Roberto leaned on the stall door, watching. "He likes you." Jack chuckled softly. "Or he likes not starving." The evening passed quietly. Jack stayed with the foal long after the ranch crew went home. He named him Salvador because he needed saving, and because maybe, just maybe, Jack needed saving too. By midnight, Salvador was resting on fresh straw. His breathing was steady, his eyes calmer. Jack leaned back against the stall wall, letting exhaustion sink into his bones. He had planned to check fence lines that morning, not rescue a wild foal that would turn his world upside down. But sometimes, life didn't wait for you to be ready. Just before dawn, Roberto tapped on the doorway. "Boss, you need to hear this." Jack stepped outside, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Roberto handed him a phone. Sheriff Tom Bradley's voice came through the speaker. "Jack, we need to talk. I'm getting reports you've got a wild foal on your property." Jack's stomach tightened. "What reports?" "Town gossip," Tom said. "Someone mentioned your new baby horse. BLM caught wind. They want to come out." Jack closed his eyes for a moment. It was happening too fast. Too soon. "Tom," Jack said quietly, "you know I couldn't leave him there." "I know," the sheriff replied, "but saving a wild foal without permission is illegal. They're calling it unauthorized possession of federal wildlife." "Possession?" Jack said sharply. He was dying. "I get it," Tom said, softening. "But they don't." When Jack hung up, he stared at the sunrise bleeding across the horizon. Roberto stood beside him a long moment before speaking. "What now?" Jack looked toward the shed where Salvador slept. "I'm not letting them take him to be put down, not after everything." 2 days later, Salvador was standing stronger, drinking, walking, even letting Jack brush his tangled coat. Hope was returning to his eyes. Real hope. The kind you could feel. But Jack's growing peace shattered Wednesday night when the ranch gate alarm beeped. Headlights, a dust trail, a white government truck rolling toward the barn. Roberto stepped beside Jack. "It's BLM." Jack felt his heartbeat thud against his ribs. They were here. They would take Salvador. They would call it protocol. They would say the foal didn't have a chance in the wild. They would say euthanasia was the humane thing. Jack clenched his jaw. Not this time. A woman stepped out of the truck. Patricia Wells, senior BLM officer. She walked toward Jack with practiced authority. "Mr. Murphy," she said, "we're here about the foal. His name is Salvador." Jack replied quietly. Patricia sighed. "Jack, we need to evaluate him." Jack stepped aside, letting her into the shed. Salvador lifted his head the moment she entered. His ears twitched nervously. He pressed closer to Jack's leg. Patricia studied the foal. "He's in better shape than I expected." "He's alive," Jack said. "That should count for something." She took notes, asked questions, looked at the rope scar, the dehydration, the weight loss. Each mark told the truth. Salvador had been through something terrible. "This isn't normal separation," Patricia admitted. Someone interfered. Jack nodded. He wasn't lost. He was taken. But before anyone could say more, a sudden sound echoed from the hills. A sharp, powerful cry. Salvador's head shot up. His ears pricked. His entire body trembled. He made a sound Jack had never heard. High, desperate, filled with recognition. Patricia froze. "Was that?" The cry came again, closer. Roberto stepped outside, eyes wide. "Jack, you need to see this." Jack ran out of the shed and looked toward the fence line. There, standing tall against the rising sun, was a wild bay mare. Her coat was dusty, her legs scratched from miles of hard travel, but her eyes were locked on the ranch, and she was calling for her foal, calling for Salvador. Trembling, Jack whispered, "My God, she came for him." The mare's call echoed across the fields like a storm rolling in from the canyon. Salvador answered instantly, his tiny voice trembling with a mix of excitement, fear, and longing. Jack felt the sound hit him deep, like something breaking open inside. "She's been tracking him," Patricia whispered. "A mother doesn't call like that unless she knows her foal is close." Roberto pointed at the ridge. "Look at her legs, boss. She's been traveling for days, maybe weeks." The mare moved along the fence, pacing, sniffing, searching. Her muscles trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes stayed sharp. Determined. She wasn't wandering. She wasn't curious. She had come for one reason, to get her baby back. Inside the shed, Salvador grew frantic. He paced the stall door, pawing at the ground, calling again and again. Each cry from him seemed to carry a piece of his heart. Jack opened the gate slowly, letting the young foal step into the yard. Salvador didn't hesitate. The moment his hooves touched open ground, he turned toward the sound of his mother's voice. He knew her. He remembered her. And she remembered him. Patricia exhaled, shakily. This almost never happens, once a foal is separated for this long." But Salvador was already moving, wobbly at first, then faster, stronger, more sure. Jack, Patricia, and Roberto followed behind but kept their distance. They knew instinct would guide what came next. The mare froze when she saw him. Her whole body stiffened. She lowered her head, nostrils flaring as she breathed in the scent of her lost foal. Salvador slowed, stopping just a few feet away. Silence fell over the ranch yard. A silence so thick Jack could feel it pressing against his chest. Then the mare stepped forward, slow, careful, almost disbelieving. Salvador made a soft sound. A small whinny filled with recognition and relief. That was all it took. The mare rushed to him, nuzzling him, touching her nose to every part of him, his neck, his back, his belly, her movements wild and full of desperation. Salvador leaned into her, shaking with relief. She groomed him frantically, the way only a mother who thought her child was gone forever could. Jack felt tears burn in his eyes. He tried to blink them away, but they came anyway. Patricia quietly wiped her face. This is a miracle, Jack." But Jack shook his head. "No, it's a mother who never gave up." The mare kept nudging Salvador, almost counting him, checking him, assuring herself that he was really there. Salvador pressed against her side the way all foals do when they feel safe. For the first time since Jack found him, Salvador's trembling stopped. He was home. He was whole. He was loved. But the moment of reunion didn't erase the reality. Patricia stepped forward. "Jack, we still need to address the situation. Technically, keeping a wild foal is illegal." "Patricia," Jack said softly, never looking away from the reunited pair, "don't take them from each other." Patricia hesitated. She wasn't a cold-hearted bureaucrat, not today. She watched the mare grooming her foal with a kind of fierce gratitude. She saw the rope scar on Salvador's neck. She saw the fear in the mare's eyes. She saw the truth. "They can't stay here," she said gently, "but separating them again would destroy both of them." Roberto stepped closer. "There has to be another way." Patricia thought hard. She pulled out her phone, stepping away while she made several urgent calls to supervisors, to the sanctuary, to a university researcher she trusted. Tension filled the air as they waited. Finally, she returned. "I have a solution," she said. Jack straightened. "The university is launching a new research program," Patricia continued, "about wild horse family bonds, migration patterns, and maternal behavior. They want to track a mare and foal pair, a pair that proves just how strong and important these bonds are." Jack's heart pounded. "You're saying?" "I'm saying they won't separate them," Patricia said. "The mare and foal will be released together, tracked, protected, studied. And their reunion, your rescue, will help change how we handle wild horse cases in the future." Hope washed over Jack so strong he had to steady himself on the fence post. Patricia looked at him with something like respect. "Jack, what you did saved that little foal's life, and what the mare did brought him home. The world needs to see that." Quote, The next morning was release day. The paddock gate was left open. The mare stepped out first, ears alert, her muscles ready for the long journey home. Salvador followed close beside her, now walking with confidence. Strength. Life. Jack stood at the fence, hands gripping the wood, chest tight. Salvador paused near him, sniffing the air. For a moment, just a moment. The foal looked up at Jack with the same eyes that had begged for help on the ridge. Jack knelt down. "Go on, son," he murmured. "Your mama's waiting." Salvador touched his nose to Jack's shoulder. "A thank you, a goodbye." Then he turned and trotted after his mother. The mare looked back once, only once, as if acknowledging the man who saved her child. Then the two disappeared into the open range, side by side, trailing dust beneath the bright Arizona sun. Jack stayed there long after they vanished, the wind sweeping across the fields, carrying the faint echo of their hoofbeats. Roberto stepped beside him. "Boss, you all right?" Jack wiped his eyes. "Yeah, I'm all right." The wind shifted again, and for a brief, impossible second, Jack thought he heard a distant whinny carried across the canyon. Light, free, alive. Maybe it was Salvador. Maybe it was just the wind, but to Jack Murphy, it felt like a thank you carried across miles of open land. A reminder that love, even the kind you let go, never truly leaves.